Mike.
Yeah, we're okay.
Okay, shut the thing off.
Shut it down.
Before I turn 65, I'm planning on making that my biggest season ever. Make some real money.
If you've watched Tony Beets long enough, you know the man doesn't shock easily. He's built an empire out of chaos, hauled fortune out of frozen mud, and sworn his way through every catastrophe the Yukon could dream up. But even a legend of the gold rush has a limit, and that limit turned out to be buried right under his own feet.
But I didn't see my life as a farmer. So I decided the wisest thing to do was just call it quit, get the hell out, and go do something else.
It started with a simple dig. The kind of routine work Tony's crew could do half asleep. Instead, they uncovered something that didn't belong in any mining camp, something older, stranger, and unsettling enough to stop even Tony mid-sentence. Word spread quietly at first, whispered among locals, then leaked into the mining community. And now the entire internet is piecing together what he never expected to find beneath his house. Whatever you think you know about the man or the land he built his empire on, this discovery changes everything. If there is one thing most miners agree on, it's that the ground rarely gives up its secrets easily. The Klondike, especially, hides more than it reveals. Permafrost can swallow a century's worth of human ambition, machinery, campsites, and journals without leaving so much as a hint on the surface. Even seasoned miners who spend their lives studying gravel patterns, soil density, and the faintest signs of ancient water channels can dig the same patch of earth for years and still miss what lies only a few feet deeper. Tony Beets is one such miner. After 4 decades in the Yukon, he has earned a reputation for being unshakable. Fans of Gold Rush know him for his booming voice, his unapologetic work ethic, and his willingness to pour millions into reviving long-forgotten mining relics like the historic Dredge No. 4. But behind the gruff exterior is a man who understands the land better than most engineers who come north with tidy textbooks and clean hands. He has seen pits collapse in slow motion, watched gold streaks change direction without warning, and dug through layers of soil that seem to rewrite the history of the Klondike with every bucket load. Still, nothing in his decades of experience prepared him for what happened on a warm Yukon morning when his crew began what should have been a mind-numbingly simple job, just trenching a utility line beside his home base. On most mining properties, trenching is a non-event. You dig a straight channel, drop in a pipe or modification, backfill, pack it down, and move on. Near Tony's place, which is located in the historic mining corridor outside Dawson City, the upper layers of ground typically consist of a familiar sequence of organic material, then compact silt, and then layers of glacial till filled with mixed gravels. Below that lies the true challenge of northern mining: permafrost, a dense and icebound layer that is every excavator's nightmare. And what they thought they encountered was. Instead, it struck something foreign. The operator heard it first. It was not the thud of rock, not the scrape of a boulder, but a metallic echo. Not the flimsy clang of a discarded oil drum from mid-century mining either, but something heavier, something that pushed back against the bucket. Curious, he repositioned and scraped again. The same sharp resonance rang out. Definitely metal and definitely old. These finds weren't uncommon in certain parts of the Klondike. In the decades following the 1896 to 1899 gold rush, massive floating dredges reshaped entire valleys. They processed river bottoms, carved through hillsides, and left behind linear piles of tailings that still define the landscape today. Miners often stumble upon discarded sheet metal, stove fragments, or rusted tools buried beneath layers of dredge spoils. But this particular item behaved differently, and instead of bending, flaking, or shredding under pressure, it held firm. So the operator did what Yukon miners always do when something unexpected appears. He shut down the machine and called for a second set of eyes. Within minutes, Tony himself came walking over, his boots crunching on thawing ground. He approached the trench with the calmness of a man who had spent half his life untangling strange situations. At first glance, even he assumed it was nothing out of the ordinary, but as the excavator shaved off more soil, the object revealed a shape of something wide, curved, and unmistakably structured, and it didn't stop there. Every foot of additional clearing made it abundantly clear that this wasn't scrap. It wasn't a container or some leftover barrel. It was part of something larger. Tony reportedly paused, leaned on the bucket edge, and simply said, "Well, that's not supposed to be there." He was right, because there were no records, at least none available in public archives of any documented structures beneath that particular parcel of ground. The land, like most property around Dawson City, had passed through multiple hands over the decades. Some parts had been mined heavily. Others were skipped because of permafrost thickness, cost, or low gold values. Nowhere in surviving government maps, mining registrar documents, or Yukon Consolidated Gold Corporation archives was there a reference to a subterranean installation of any significance beneath his present-day residence and shop grounds. Given Yukon's history, that didn't make the discovery impossible, but it did make it exceptionally rare. A quick call to a local geotechnical contact and a historian familiar with the region's early mining efforts confirmed the first suspicion that whatever was under there wasn't modern. The next step was careful excavation. As the crew expanded the trench, the soil profile shifted dramatically. The usual glacial gravel gave way to compacted silt layers that hadn't been touched in over a century. Then came a patch of fine sand that suggested historical flooding, something that hadn't occurred naturally in that area since before dredges re-engineered the waterways. Then finally, beyond those layers, the metallic structure extended deeper, disappearing beneath harder frozen ground. What began as an hour-long chore had now become a controlled uncovering of something far older and far more elaborate than anyone expected. Tony, a man who thrives on forward motion, suddenly found himself staring into the past, literally buried beneath his own property. Whatever lay below was no accident, no leftover machinery, and no trivial relic. It was the beginning of a story forgotten by time, hidden by permafrost, and waiting more than a century to be found. And this was only the beginning. To understand why the discovery beneath Tony Beets's property caught so much attention, you first have to understand the land itself. Tracing the past and what the Yukon's hidden layers can tell us. The Klondike is not like other mining regions. It is a geological and historical puzzle box that has been layered, compressed, reshaped, and frozen in ways that make the past unusually well preserved. It has seen the rise and fall of mining companies, technological revolutions, catastrophic floods, and one of the most intense gold stampedes in world history. Anything buried here stands a far better chance of surviving the passage of time than in most places. That's why, when Tony's crew exposed the metallic curvature of an unidentified structure, it immediately raised eyebrows among the region's historians and geologists. Not because finding old equipment in the Klondike is unusual, it isn't, but because the specific location, depth, and construction hinted at something far more deliberate than a casually abandoned object. Permafrost acts like a time capsule. Once the ground freezes solid, often to depths exceeding 100 meters in certain Yukon valleys, organic material, wooden structures, metal equipment, and even footprints can remain preserved for centuries. Archaeologists have recovered wooden tools from prehistoric indigenous hunting sites, boot soles and tin cans from the 1898 stampeders, personal letters sealed in ice, and even entire mining cabins perfectly preserved beneath tailings. All because the frozen layers shield them from decay and oxygen exposure. So when Tony's trench exposed metal that showed minimal corrosion for its estimated age, the explanation was straightforward. It had likely been frozen for decades, possibly more than a century, its condition effectively paused by the permafrost. Historical mining in the Klondike took many forms, like pick and shovel, placer mining, drift mining, hydraulicking, and eventually large-scale dredging. Drift mining, in particular, involved digging shafts and tunnels under frozen ground to follow gold-rich pay streaks. In the early 1900s, dozens of drift mines were carved beneath hillsides around Dawson City and its tributaries. Many of these tunnels are undocumented because claim boundaries were disputed. Small operations kept no written records. Fires destroyed early offices. Dredges later wiped out surface evidence, or even companies collapsing before filing proper maps. It is entirely plausible for a forgotten drift tunnel or part of a mining chamber to be rediscovered today, especially on land once heavily claimed by small prospectors. But the object found on Tony's property didn't resemble typical drift mine construction. Drift tunnels were usually timbered with logs, not metal. They collapsed easily. They were cramped, utilitarian, and rarely reinforced with anything costly. And they rarely included metal architecture, except for rails used in ore cart systems. The structure revealed near his home base, however, was curved, rigid, and uniform. Its shape indicated manufacturing precision, not frontier improvisation. Whatever it was, it had required engineering. And this, of course, brought up a big question. Was it linked to the dredge era? Between 1905 and the late 1960s, the Yukon's gold fields were dominated by floating dredges, massive industrial machines that reshaped entire creek valleys. Companies such as the Yukon Gold Company and later the Yukon Consolidated Gold Corporation kept meticulous records of the dredges, tailing fields, water systems, and power plants they built. But not everything appears in the surviving archives. Fires destroyed YCGC documentation more than once. Several map collections remain incomplete. Some projects were started and abandoned before being documented, and wartime labor shortages meant records from the 1940s are particularly patchy. Some miners have encountered buried pump houses no longer marked on maps, old fuel storage vaults, dynamite bunkers long absorbed into the landscape, makeshift ventilation tunnels and steel culverts installed during emergency repairs. These discoveries, while uncommon, have occurred. So one working theory was that the structure near Tony's property could be tied to an undocumented YCGC support facility, perhaps part of a storage vault or auxiliary tunnel that had been buried by dredge tailings during the mid-20th century. Two problems quickly became apparent the more they looked. One, the metal composition didn't match mid-century construction. Analysts familiar with YCGC materials noted that their culverts and structural metal typically used riveted segments. The object under Tony's property showed no rivets at the exposed surface, just a smooth curvature. Two, the orientation was wrong for a utility tunnel. Most YCGC tunnels followed predictable paths, being straight, accessible, and aligned with surface structures. This buried object had no relation to any known historical surface footprint. This pushed experts toward a more complex possibility. This might perhaps be a pre-dredge artifact. Before industrial dredges arrived, the Klondike was full of small mining syndicates, and individual prospectors. These early miners built underground chambers, hand-dug shafts, air vents, makeshift storage rooms, and smelting attempt pits, but anything metal-reinforced would have required immense effort. Only well-funded groups, often formed by American, British, or European investors, could afford engineered substructures. Some of these ventures were never documented properly, especially those that failed within their first season. If the object under Tony's land dated to that era, it could be part of one of those forgotten operations. When consulted, a regional historian suggested that the object's curvature might hint at something increasingly rare in the Yukon: a collapsed steam boiler or the remains of a buried ore processing component from a small-scale mechanical operation. Early steam-powered equipment was often abandoned in place once a claim ran out of money. Over the decades, tailings, silt, and ice could easily bury such machines completely. Some boilers and engine housings were cylindrical and built from thick steel, precisely the type that might survive underground with minimal decay. This explanation fits the facts better than most. Still, there was a problem. Tony's crew had cleared a surface area of nearly 8 feet, and the curved metal continued deeper, extending beyond the profile of any typical Gold Rush-era boiler. The structure was wider, straighter, and based on soil layers, significantly older. It wasn't a boiler. It wasn't a tunnel. It wasn't a storage vault. It wasn't dredge infrastructure. Whatever it was, it didn't match any known category of Yukon mining artifact, and that meant that more digging was required. What Tony Beets's discovery means. The excavation beneath Tony Beets's property isn't just an isolated anomaly. It's a vivid reminder of the Yukon's layered history. It shows how the ambitions of miners from more than a century ago can intersect with the life and work of a modern mining legend. What lies under his house is, in essence, a bridge between the eras of the Gold Rush past and the industrial-scale operations of today. Gold Rush miners weren't merely opportunists, they were inventive problem-solvers operating under extreme conditions. They built tunnels, chambers, and storage areas using materials at hand, working long hours in sub-zero temperatures. Yet, documentation of their work is scarce. Fires, floods, and corporate consolidations obliterated many early maps, and small-scale miners often preferred secrecy to preserve their claims from rivals. The tunnel beneath his property exemplifies this ingenuity. Its unexpected presence suggests a more sophisticated operation than typical drift mining, possibly a private syndicate or a deep exploratory project. Its exact nature has been identified as a man-made, partially metallic, and curved underground structure, likely dating to the Gold Rush or early 20th century mining operations. While its precise purpose remains unconfirmed, it appears to have been engineered for a specialized function, possibly an ore storage, processing, or a private exploratory shaft. Its exceptional preservation is thanks to the permafrost that has shielded it for decades, even over a century. Each piece of evidence provides historians with a tangible connection to 19th and early 20th century mining culture, allowing experts to reconstruct operational strategies that have been largely lost. For Tony, the discovery isn't just a curiosity, it's a responsibility. As someone who restores historic dredges, revives old claims, and documents mining processes, he has long served as a bridge between past and present. The excavation beneath his home reinforces his unique position as someone who doesn't merely extract gold, but also preserves stories embedded in the Yukon's terrain. His reaction, according to colleagues, combined curiosity, humor, and practicality. Unlike many in his position, he did not sensationalize the find. Instead, he ensured that proper archaeological and safety procedures were followed. Work was temporarily halted, Yukon archaeologists and geologists evaluated the site. The structure and artifacts were mapped, measured, and photographed. Artifacts were cataloged and stored. Fragile areas were stabilized. In this way, his discovery is not just a private thrill. It is a shared contribution to understanding the Klondike's history. While the specifics of this discovery are unique, the Yukon has a long documented history of underground finds that demonstrate how the region preserves history remarkably well. A perfectly intact miner's cabin, collapsed into permafrost, discovered near Hunker Creek, with bedding and tools still inside. There's also an old gold dredge component, abandoned in frozen pits and later excavated in nearly working condition, as well as a drift miner's lantern, its wick still intact, found in a sealed shaft near Sulphur Creek. Also, Ice Age fossils, including the famous Blue Babe Steppe bison, were preserved so well that researchers analyzed the protein structure of its tissues. Each case demonstrates the same pattern involving permafrost and silt, which do not just hide the past, but freeze it in time. The discovery beneath Tony Beets' house fits this pattern, but its size, construction, and location make it exceptional. News of the discovery spread quickly within the mining community and beyond. It resonated for several reasons. Even with modern surveying and decades of historical research, the Yukon still conceals secret shafts, drifts, and mining projects. This find proves that history is not fully mapped. The structural integrity of the tunnel highlights how permafrost and soil conditions can preserve artifacts, offering guidance for both mining and archaeology. Undocumented tunnels remain a hazard in areas of active mining. Modern operators must balance extraction with historical awareness. The find also inspires miners to pay closer attention to the land they work. Every excavation, trench, or drill site could intersect with a piece of history, adding weight to the idea that mining is not only about wealth, but also about stewardship. Perhaps the most profound impact of this discovery is its symbolic significance. The miners who carved tunnels under frozen gravel in the late 1800s never imagined Tony Beets would be standing above their work more than a century later. They operated in secrecy, under extreme conditions, and with limited tools, yet their ingenuity endures. He, on the other hand, represents the modern face of the Yukon's mining legacy that features advanced machinery, television fame, multi-million-dollar operations, and deep technical knowledge. The tunnel beneath his house is a silent testament to the continuity of mining ambition in the Yukon. It's a reminder that despite technological advancements, the challenges of the land remain fundamentally the same. This discovery offers an opportunity for education and reflection. By documenting and preserving the tunnel and associated artifacts, historians and miners alike can study a microcosm of Yukon history. Though buried, the tunnel is no longer invisible. It has emerged, briefly, into the spotlight not as treasure in a chest, but as a bridge between eras and a reminder of the enduring human drive to carve opportunity out of the frozen north. If you enjoyed diving into these behind-the-scenes insights, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories just like this. And don't stop here. Click the next video on your screen to uncover even more surprising Hollywood moments waiting for you.